Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Washington National Cathedral, and a happy 4th to you all. Happy 4th. We're back after 2 years, really, where we haven't been able to gather, and it's such a delight and excitement to see so many of you here. The last 2 years have really been very difficult for everybody around the world, and it's so nice to be able to gather. The world somehow seems a little bit more challenging now than when we went into the pandemic for so very many reasons, which is why days like today are super important to recognize and celebrate the things that really do bind us together, and that really found for us the basis of this terrific country in which we live. So before we go any further, I would like us to do a little exercise right now, which is to stand up wherever you are. You can cross the aisle, there's no danger with that here, and just wish those around you a very happy 4th. Look them in the eye and wish everybody a happy 4th. Off you go. Okay, thank you, that's enough. You can have too much of a good thing. Just want to welcome again our guests here, Washington Symphonic Brass, who adorn this occasion every year. Welcome back, folks. The band's director, Phil Snedeker, and Scott Wood, who is also so exciting from the podium. And there's lots of great music to come today. Just want to introduce and maybe see if we can, if our video folks can link us up with the console, the organ console, which is buried back there in the cathedral. I don't know if we can get, oh, there they are. There's Tom, and there's George. You'll be hearing from them a little bit later on, but this is a somewhat sad occasion for the music program, as this will be the last occasion that George Fergus will be playing today. So this is his final event with the cathedral. He moves on to Christ Church, Savannah, to take up a position of director of music there, and we all love him to death, but we wish him all the very best as he goes forward. Before we acknowledge, okay? Now, before we go ahead, I need just to roll out one more July 4th tradition, which I'm very much hoping that Tom Sheehan will continue, and George's replacement, Rebecca Aaron, next year. And that is the colorful array of socks that have been deployed by the organists. Now, I wonder if George can get his feet somewhere in sight of the camera. He has chosen this year the Captain America sock. And is it? Oh, there he is. So that's quite enough of that. Anyway, let's get on with what I think is a fantastic, fantastic program. Thanks for coming. Happy 4th. I hope you have a great time.
Hi there, my name is Tom Sheehan. As Canon Mike McCarthy said before, I'm the organist here at Washington National Cathedral, and it is my pleasure to welcome you all here and be the second to wish you a happy Independence Day. The piece you just heard, oh yes, applause, applause. Independence Day. The piece you just heard is by Cambridge, Massachusetts-based composer Carson Kuhlman, who's an excellent friend of mine, and that piece has a somewhat curious title, Concertino FOCO. FOCO is an acronym in this case. It refers to Friends of the Koczmar Organ, which is a municipal organ in the city of Portland, Maine, and that piece was written for its rededication when that organ was rebuilt, restored, and excellently reinstalled. And there used to be a wonderful tradition of municipal organs in this country, which I think we've now nearly lost. There used to be nearly 50 city government-owned organs around this country, and now there are 2 left. There's the one in Portland and one in San Diego. So that's a part of American organ history that we can celebrate with this fantastic piece. The next piece you'll hear is called Revelations of St. John the Divine, and it is by Larry King, not the more famous news anchor, but the sometime organist for decades of Trinity Church in New York City on Wall Street. And Larry was an amazingly experimental voice in church music and in organ music, and I think represents another facet of American organ music, which is just so important, and that's the experimental nature. This piece in particular is written for organ, but also for prepared tape. So Larry was also a fan of rock music, and so he created this prepared tape track on his synthesizers. The organ is in fact also a synthesizer. Both the digital synthesizer, analog synthesizer, and the pipe organ share this ability to create complex sounds out of very simple elemental components that get combined together in lots of different ways. So this is a match made in heaven. The Revelations of St. John the Divine is a very theatrical and dramatic piece that goes through lots of different moods, and you'll hear a lot of unusual sounds.
Well, good morning. And let me be perhaps the third, and I think, oh yes, clap for good morning. That's great. We're so glad you're all here. And I'll be perhaps the last person to wish you happy 4th of July until maybe 35 minutes from now. So you can sit back and relax. In addition to the organ and the brass, today we're joined by the Cathedral Choir, who will be providing a little bit of a textural reprieve from what is a very loud instrument and a whole bunch of brass players who are very happy to celebrate the 4th of July. Thank you all for being with us. The choir you'll see in your program will sing two pieces, both of which are out of the very same tradition, but are two very different takes on the tradition. These both come from a source called Southern Harmony, which is an old 19th century hymnal incorporating a lot of tunes from the shape note tradition, which grew up as an authentic American choral tradition very much before the advent of professional choirs, or I suppose in a different strain of musical evolution than that of professional choirs in the United States. This tradition is built on community and community singing. The first of these two pieces that you'll hear in just a minute is an arrangement by Stephen Paulus, who was a Minnesota composer who died just a few years ago. And this gives it a very introspective treatment to a new text by a Minnesota poet and author. And the second one, the Alice Parker arrangement, is very much more adjacent to the historical tradition of this type of singing. It has a very strong rhythm. It creates almost a percussion out of the singers and out of the singing texture without ever needing to stomp your foot or clap your hands or any of those things. So in these two pieces, you hear yet another American musical tradition being drawn into this concert today.
Tell
What a terrific piece, and just again to acknowledge the fine musicianship that's on this stage right now, Washington Symphonic Brass and our organists Tom Sheehan and George Fergus. You'll notice that you have a very sort of luscious brochure here, and part of that is to say that this is the final concert annually of our concert season at the Cathedral. But you'll be pleased to see that on the back page we are announcing our season for next year, which will take us all around the season to this final event again, and to say that we are now partnering very intentionally with our residential choral society, the Cathedral Choral Society, in promoting our concerts. There's lots of really good stuff here, and some great organ concerts along the way. So if organ is your thing, then please look at this at the back and join us. So we come to that stage in the program where I'm going to ask you to support the Cathedral. So please don't leave. Any minute now, ushers will be coming around the building with plates, and I ask you to be as generous as you can in supporting the Cathedral. The Cathedral receives no funding from any central church or any federal government money. It is funded entirely by the generosity of folks just like you, and I think for the 15 or 1,800 people who are viewing in live from home right now via the internet. So please, I would ask you, so that we can continue to offer these concerts, other concerts, and to sustain our music ministry here at the Cathedral, please be as generous as you can. So thank you for your consideration with that. Now, obviously, writing checks takes a little bit of time, so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the organ. Please don't be too distracted by me. Just have it as sort of background noise for now whilst you carry out the exercise. But you'll notice in this brochure that Tom writes a little bit about the organ. When I first arrived here nearly, 19 years ago, 20 years ago, the organ was already in not a very good state. It doesn't work in many areas and has really come to the end of its natural life. Now, people can say, how can that be? It sounds magnificent. Well, it does sound magnificent, partly because of the navigational skills of our tremendously talented organists. But I'm going to ask Tom a few questions now, so I don't know if you can patch me through to the console again. And there he is. So Tom, could you just give us a little demonstration? I'll let you do this a little bit. A demonstration of really what works and what doesn't. And maybe just a little bit of how challenging sometimes it is for you to do your work.
Sure. Is my mic on? I think it is. Great. Hi, everyone. So probably one of the most famous sounds on this organ, you've heard a little bit today, but you can hear it on your own now, on its own now. This is the trumpet en chamade, it's called. It's a very loud set of trumpet pipes, and they're mounted right over top of the high altar. This is just a really quick and easy demonstration of what doesn't work here. Here is a descending chromatic scale. You're supposed to hear all of the notes. So there's a quick demonstration of the sort of things that we find also down at the bottom of that. You're supposed to hear all of these notes keep getting lower. That last one gets higher at the end. It's really not supposed to. So there's a lot of things like that around the organ. There's also an entire division of the organ, roughly a quarter of it or so. I don't know how well you can see the keys right now, but if I draw all of these stops right here, which is a dozen or so of them, none of them make any sound whatsoever. So that's not good either. And there's a lot of problems as well with tuning. I'm trying to think of a particularly egregious example. Some of you, those of the musically inclined among the audience will know that this is not a very good octave that you're about to hear. So that has a bit of you can hear there's a bit of an oscillation in the pitch. That's because the tuning of the organ overall will not remain stable at all, which is a real shame.
Tom, a quick question for you.
Yeah.
Just so folks understand, again, it sounds fantastic, but the organ is made up of many, many parts, which you can't really see or hear. And there are many of them which individually can create the organ to not work. Multiple organ failure, if you want to look at it that way. Could you just tell us a little bit about that and just the winding system and stuff, just so folks understand? It really is, as someone described this organ once, as an aged ballet dancer who goes onto the stage and performs miraculously and then collapses in the side of the stage when they come off. That's a little bit, I think, what we have here. Is that right?
That's exactly it. The reason an organ is called an organ is because it's like an organism with lots of little parts within it. The whole is made up of lots of smaller components. There's over 10,000 pipes in this organ, and each one of those pipes has to be supplied with air at exactly the right time, at exactly the right pressure. And the amount of machinery upstairs above us right now is immense, and it's all computer controlled with about a dozen different computers that need to be synchronized with fiber optic cable all over the building. So it's very complicated, and because each of those, like the organs in an organism, they're somewhat independent, but they're also somewhat interconnected. So one thing can fail, and we just cannot use it. So you mentioned the navigational skills before. Lots of what we do here is just keeping track of what works and what doesn't work, whether it be the tuning, dead notes, notes that stick on, which is really dangerous, or loud air leaks, which we have plenty of as well. So there's a lot of distracting noise that we have to work around from air leaking as well.
Hey, Tom, thanks so much for that little update. That's been really helpful. Maybe just to say, during the pandemic, whilst life has been a little slower here from the amount of music we've been working on, and Tom now in his third year with us, we've been looking at plans of what the organ might be like when we are actually able to put it back into action. The idea is it belongs to a romantic classical orchestral style of building that goes back to 1938. And we're looking to envision an organ that is restored a little bit to that initial life. It's been changed over the years. From 1938, the building stopped here. There was a big screen just here, and you guys were nowhere to be seen. And as the building opened up, so we had to add and change to the organ. So I'm glad to say we have a scheme, and I'm also glad to say we are underway for the support of this project, which we will tell you a little bit more later on in the year. But just keep your eyes on this, and it will promise to be, again, one of the most spectacular instruments in the country. I think I've now chatted enough. I can see all my usher colleagues have left. Thank you again for your generosity. And this will be my last time to introduce to you now George Fergus.
talk of the intricacies of the organ, we failed to mention we have two of the world's best organists back there, George and Tom. Let's give them another hand. Before I announce the next piece, I wanted to clarify something. This morning, I was explaining to Kevin Gibo's daughter, Celia. He has a 4-year-old daughter. Kevin's the trumpet player that played that beautiful solo in the second piece. His daughter, Celia, was asking me why we celebrate July 4th, and I was explaining that we won our independence from Britain back in the 1700s, and because the first voice she heard this morning was Michael McCarthy's, I wanted to assure her that we indeed won our independence from Britain in the 1700s. I thought, I just would clarify that for her. So don't worry, we earned our independence back in 1776, and I said that, had we not, we might all still be speaking with British accents. But anyway, the purpose of our presence here on July 4th, the Washington Symphonic Brass, is to be guests on what was traditionally an organ concert, but this piece will feature brass only, and it's going to be featured in a piece by Valerie Coleman. Valerie Coleman is a very fine flute player that founded the Imani Winds, and she turned her attention to mainly composing lately, and she's the first African-American woman to have a major commission with the Philadelphia Orchestra some years ago, and they also commissioned this next piece called Fanfare for Uncommon Times. And these are indeed uncommon times, but not unlike several hundred years ago when we were fighting for our independence. So this features many different styles of music, and so we hope you enjoy this next piece that kind of puts together the traditional orchestral brass ensemble with some American music that's quite unusual. This is Fanfare for Uncommon Times by Valerie Coleman.
So just before I head back to the organ after my quick bass drum solo, I will tell you a little bit about the next piece, Mark Miller's Toccata on Lift Every Voice and Sing. Lift Every Voice and Sing is a really important melody that we treasure here at the Cathedral. It was written in 1900 as a poem, first by the amazing poet James Weldon Johnson to celebrate the Abraham Lincoln's birthday, a celebration for that. But it was quickly set to music by Johnson's brother, James Rosamond Johnson, and who was a Broadway composer. They just moved to New York, and he set this to music that has quickly become so treasured. The NAACP has declared this hundreds of years ago now the Black National Anthem. It's taken some time for other communities to get used to hearing this, but we are so happy that that has happened. Mark Miller, the composer of this piece, is a member of the faculty at Yale University and is an organist and lives in many different stylistic worlds, and this is a fusion of a few different musical styles.
So we've come to that part of the program which I always dub audience participation. And it, I suppose, is voluntary but highly encouraged. And don't worry, we'll teach you all of the words you need to know, at least to this first one, Battle Hymn of the Republic. But just a couple of things before we get going with this last leg, the bottom of the ninth, as it were. It has been such a joy and a privilege for me to be here in this space and with these amazing musicians the past 6 years or so, getting to put together, as I just said the other day, a good portion of my musical career so far here in this space and in this place. And I have to say, after 2 years of doing this concert, either totally pre-recorded or live but to an empty house, it's so wonderful to see all of you back in the building. There's something about the energy of having a live audience. So thank you. Thank you for being here. And I think we neglected to do a roll call at the beginning. For how many of you is this your first time at the Cathedral? Don't be shy. Okay, now keep your hands up. How many of you will come back? Keep your hands up. There we go. For how many of you was this concert a part of your July 4th tradition since before 2020? Oh, that's so exciting. Thank you for coming back. Thanks for, when you have a chance to reset your traditions, I'm so glad that you made a point to be back with us. This is a great way. It's always my favorite way to start Independence Day. And after this, you go do your barbecue and go watch the fireworks and all of that. This is a really special place to celebrate this holiday. Thank you for choosing to be with us. If you would like to donate and didn't have a chance in the plate, or come back and decide later that you would like to, you can find information on how to do that in your concert program, as well as on the screens now, or by going to our website, cathedral.org. I think we got in very early as the World Wide Web was getting up to get a really prime domain there. So 2 pieces left. A traditional Battle Hymn of the Republic. Most of that takes place up here, but I'll turn around, at which point you should feel very welcome to join that final refrain and the Amen if you know it. I learned this piece in high school as a choral singer, so perhaps many of you did the same. And then our final piece is an organ duet for most of it. This is the Stars and Stripes Forever of John Philip Sousa, but the brass will enter towards the end, and you should feel welcomed to sing whatever text you know to this. There are a couple out there. So I hope I can hear something about ducks being somebody's mother. That should definitely peek through the texture. Thanks again for being with us, and have a great 4th of July.